Good evening, everyone. Hello, I'm Patty Garin, the president of PLS's Board of Directors. Welcome to Building Justice, the name of tonight's celebration. 2022 will be PLS's 50th year of building justice by celebrating and honoring their clients' humanity while fighting zealously to protect their civil and human rights. Building justice is a collaborative project, and all of you are essential participants in this fight. Whether you are calling legislators to support changes in the law, or taking on representation of an incarcerated person, or working on reentry issues with community stakeholders, or contributing financial support, PLS could not continue this fight without you. Challenging the DOC, changing its culture, changing its focus from cruel and racist punishment to helping people live healthy lives is an enormous undertaking that requires a profoundly collaborative effort. There are many aspects of our prison system that need to be addressed. Just for starters, the living conditions are squalid, the classification process is counterproductive, the healthcare system is abysmal, the system is built upon structural racism, and don't get me started on parole. One aspect of this year's effort that I would like to highlight is the need to bring transparency and accountability to the DOC. If we can do that, it will greatly improve our chances of changing the other issues that make our prison system a national laughingstock. We need your support to get a real ombudsperson in place, one who will genuinely care about our clients and be ready to call out the DOC on its abuses. I cannot fully express how appreciative we are to have all of you in this fight with us. In Massachusetts, as of today, there are 13,042 persons incarcerated in DOC prisons, county houses of corrections, and jails. There are only 20 PLS staff to represent those 13,000 people. That is quite a caseload. These 9 staff attorneys, 3 fellow attorneys, 5 paralegals, 3 administrative assistants, and 1 development person are dedicated advocates who are devoting their lives to advocating for those 13,000 incarcerated people. During 2020 alone, PLS received 1,700 calls from people who had been beaten by guards, denied medical care, locked in solitary, or exposed to other torturous and dehumanizing conditions. I want to, on behalf of everybody who is on this Zoom, thank the PLS staff for everything they do. It is an enormous undertaking, and it requires incredible dedication and work. So thank you. And next to talk to you is Lizz Matos, the director of PLS, the executive director of PLS.
Thank you so much, Patty. I see Josh in the background too. Hi, Josh. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us tonight. We are on a timeline, so I want to keep us going, but I do want to just start out by saying how amazing it is to see so many familiar faces that I miss and haven't seen in so long. And it's just really wonderful to have this space with you tonight. I'm sorry that it has to be virtual again, and I really hope this is the last time I say that this will hopefully be the last time we do this virtually. But I do hope to see you in person very, very soon. And I hope that your families and all of you have managed to stay in good health over the last year since we last saw you. And like 2020, 2021 has certainly been a momentous and difficult year as well. From the historic presidential inauguration, can you believe that that was just a few months ago, to the January 6th attacks on the Capitol, the ongoing painful reckoning with police brutality, racism, sexism, and xenophobia that permeate our society and our structures, the existential threat of climate change, the fight for humanity at the center of the mass and caste debate, to the election, the historic election of the first woman of color as mayor of Boston. You know, interestingly, the mass and caste debate is a sad and incredibly frustrating example of the dehumanization at the center of the uphill battles that characterize our work every single day. It's really a debate about the hierarchy that persists in how our communities are valued, how they're resourced, and how they're protected. Because if the lives of those who live in the encampments were truly equally valued, they wouldn't be living there. and they certainly wouldn't be getting funneled into the criminal justice system again in an incredibly regressive move that is really about the repeated failure to invest in basic services. PLS has been working with an incredible coalition to push back on the incarceration of folks living at Mass and Cass and the failure to really treat this as a public health issue that it really is. And we're honored to work with so many advocates, public health folks, doctors, and people who are on the ground actually providing services to people at Mass and Cass every day and understand that this is really about dehumanization. The same dehumanization is rearing its ugly head as COVID continues to spread in jails and prisons and weighs heavily on the thousands of incarcerated people in Massachusetts and the tens of thousands of loved ones who struggle to support them every single day. Although I'd love to report that the virus is under control and that vaccinations have resolved everything, unfortunately, we are seeing a very concerning uptick right now in cases with outbreaks in multiple county jails and in DOC prisons across the state. Worcester County is currently under medical lockdown due to an outbreak. Essex County has over 100 positive cases, Bristol at least 53, Middlesex has more than a handful, at least a dozen in the DOC, with a concentration at MASAC, which is the facility holding folks who are being civilly committed in a prison for substance use treatment that they, by the way, are not getting and now are exposed to COVID while they are already detoxing and medically compromised. But despite the certain harm that will befall this already largely medically compromised population, and despite the legislature passing budget language twice mandating decarceration and strong oversight, corrections officials and the executive branch continue to refuse to decarcerate to reduce prison density, even though it is the #1 thing that public health officials have been calling for since the beginning of the pandemic. This refusal to follow legal mandates is also a trend. As you will hear today in the speakers' stories, fighting for basic dignity and survival through lawsuits, organizing, and policy work is necessary, but it will never be enough without accountability and oversight. We thank the legislature and particularly Senator Sonia Chang Diaz for her tireless efforts in getting this public health oversight mechanism in motion and through the budget process and for continuing to work with advocates to make real change happen. But oversight and accountability are critically important for so many reasons. As is evident with multiple provisions of the Criminal Justice Reform Act from 3 years ago, 2018, even when we fight hard with our partners and those most impacted for changes to solitary confinement, establishing a medical parole law, and discrimination against LGBTQ prisoners, there are countless hours that we spend monitoring for basic compliance, in addition to everything else we were doing. We're staffing commissions now, and we are literally just trying to get the DOC and county jails to follow the law. And what the commissioner has said herself to the legislature is they find the Criminal Justice Reform Act to be a helpful guidance. So that'll tell you a lot. And, if there were real accountability, the price gouging and predatory practices of charging families and their incarcerated loved ones for the exorbitant charges of phone calls, now video visits, and canteen items, which keep going up. Those things would have been eradicated long ago. We're actually closer than ever in Massachusetts, this is a good thing I'm reporting, to actually ending this practice of charging families and prisoners for phone calls. We may soon follow in the footsteps of Connecticut, but not without your help. And we invite you all to please join the Keeping Families Connected Coalition, building up people not prisons, and others in ensuring that House Bill 1900 and Senate Bill 1559, I'll repeat that, House Bill 1900 and Senate Bill 1559 get across the legislative finish line. We need to get this done, and it affects so many people in the Commonwealth. And every year, over $24 million go from families to the pockets of correctional people and Securus Technologies and GTL. So please go to our website and get more information on how you can support this and our many other legislative priorities. Our small team of undeniably talented staff are honestly the most committed and passionate I've ever worked with, and I'm honored to work alongside them. and excited about the new staff that we've brought on board as well. But they're also overstretched and under-resourced, particularly after the last year and a half. We are constantly agonizing over how to best use our legal skills to address the overwhelming, expansive, and urgent needs of our clients while realizing that our time, energy, and capacity is limited and simply not enough to meet the demand. We are deeply appreciative of your continued political, emotional, physical, and financial support, and we're striving to be bolder and stronger than ever. And I want to end by telling you a bit about the work that we're doing today. It's exciting, innovative, and challenging work. We just completed an extensive strategic planning process that covers the next 5 years, and it more intentionally than ever ensures that our work is driven by those most impacted and that we continue to strengthen and build relationships with our community partners in this work. It also centers race equity both internally in terms of our organizational culture and the work itself by applying a race equity lens to all of the work that we do and ensuring that we're measuring impact for all, but particularly people of color. The plan also identifies a desperate need to expand pro bono resources for our clients and prioritize the pursuit of accountability and oversight, because we know all too well that advocating for over 14,000 intakes or 2,000 intakes a year, litigating the over 24 lawsuits on our docket, and over 15 bills or even 50 bills trying to end ICE detention in Massachusetts and ending the building of a new women's prison will just not be enough. There's so much more that we are working hard at doing and aspiring to do. Please stay connected, follow us on social media, go to our website, but also meet with us. We want to partner with you, we want to learn from you, and we want to make progress as a team. Tonight, I hope you learned from Eugene, from Angie, and Ray, as they share their amazing stories and wisdom with you. You will get to ask them and staff members questions at the end of the night, so please do stick around. Thank you again for joining us and for supporting this work. We look forward to continuing on this journey with you. Thanks so much. So next up, we have none other than Ms. Bonnie Tenneriello, one of our amazing advocates, and PLS Staff Attorney. Thanks so much, Bonnie.
Thanks, Liz. Liz has done an incredible job keeping us afloat, and everyone on staff. I think I speak for all of us that we're really grateful for her leadership. I'm going to talk a little bit about our work on solitary confinement and where the issue stands now. And I'm going to assume that I don't need to tell anybody here what's wrong with being locked in a box for days or weeks or months or years at a time. And if you don't know what's wrong with it, or if you don't know enough about what's wrong with it, I think you will hear more from Eugene Ivey, who we're going to hear from in a little while, who spent years in solitary. So we've been working to end this for quite a long time. We've had some successes to try to limit the harm of solitary. Together with Eugene, we had a lawsuit to stop DOC from illegally adding on more months to long-term solitary in the departmental disciplinary unit, the DDU, where Eugene was. Grateful to him for his leadership in that lawsuit. And we've had litigation over due process for people so that, to give people a chance to show they don't need to be in solitary. That's gone up to the SJC twice, and we've won twice. But I think most importantly, we were part of a coalition of directly affected people and activists in Massachusetts against solitary confinement that worked to get the solitary reforms in the Criminal Justice Reform Act of 2018 passed. And that was very significant. But our goal is to end solitary. And today, too many people who can safely be in the prison population, or actually even out of prison, are still locked in a box. Those relatively few who are truly unsafe really need structured treatment in a secure but humane setting with substantial out of cell time. And nobody should be kept in isolation. And this is what we're working for today. I'll circle back to the solutions, but I want to say it's been a zigzag. The CJRA, the reform law of 2018, was in response to that, which limited solitary in a lot of ways. The Department of Correction created a number of units that are still highly restrictive, but because they don't meet the CJRA's definition of solitary confinement or restrictive housing, as they call it, which is 22 hours a day in cell. As long as you're under that, the CJRA doesn't apply to you. So, we now have units actually inside the DDU where Eugene was that look and feel just like solitary, just a little more time out of cell, maybe chained to a chair, maybe in a little outdoor cage. We have units in MCI Concord and Framingham that are also not subject to the CJRA, but still really restrictive, and people are sent there for punitive reasons. And there's no regulation. You're there indefinitely. There's no pathway out like the CJRA requires. And right now we're in a moment of an interesting moment of some opportunity and real danger, because the Department of Correction is now working with the Falcon Group consultants, and to its credit, the DOC says it's going to end the DDU, even though right now there is still over 70 people in the DDU as we speak suffering. They're promising to end it, and they say they're going to replace restrictive housing with units that are oriented towards programming. So, that's a great change in philosophy, but the danger is it's very possible we'll end up with a system that just expands this punitive, restrictive confinement somewhat in units that are somewhat under 22 hours, so unregulated. And we have been working together with Massachusetts Against Solitary Confinement and with Representative Miranda and Senator Eldridge, with Jesse White's leadership from PLS, to make sure this doesn't happen, or to try to stop what's happening now and make sure that all units that really are segregated confinement, where you're limited in that way, you're restricted, are subject to legal regulation and substantial out of cell time. No one should be locked in a box. And we're gonna continue to insist that prisons and jails give the education programs and jobs that actually keep people out of restrictive housing and prepare them for release. People are hungry for these opportunities. They can't get into programs. Validated programs that offer a good time are extremely short in supply. And these kind of need to be investing in opportunities, not in punishment. And we're going to continue working for that. The other thing we need, and I will wind up, is that we need to oversight to transform our prisons, and we need oversight in particular of restrictive housing and these kinds of practices. The Reform Act that I mentioned did create a restrictive housing oversight committee. I, representing PLS, have had a front row seat as a member. It's led by the Undersecretary of the Office of Public Safety and Security. It's been an interesting experience, important conversations, dialogue that needs to happen, a lot of receptivity. I don't want to downplay the importance of this kind of communication, but there's no independent oversight. There's no, this is not the same thing as an outside body with legal authority to gather information and data and draw independent conclusions. And that's, again, I want to circle back to that. That's what we need. So I'm hoping that the picture I've painted is somewhat clear, and I want to say that we're all extremely lucky to have Eugene Ivey with us, and you're gonna learn from him in just a minute. He has worked with our outgoing board member, Lisa Newman-Polk, who's going to introduce him. Lisa has been an invaluable board member. We're going to be losing her on our board of directors, but I know we'll continue working with her and making great use of her incredible energy and talent. So I will turn it over to Lisa with a lot of thanks.
Thank you, Bonnie. Yes, I've had a wonderful 7 years with PLS, and I'm so grateful to everybody at PLS. The amount of work that needs to be done for our client base is tremendous, and we need PLS. We need support for PLS, and I'm so grateful for everyone being here. So I have the great pleasure and honor of introducing a short little film that I put together with a documentary filmmaker named Rob Whittlesey, who very generously gave his time to this project, working with me and Eugene to put this together. Eugene and I have been working together for almost 4 years. He is one of my favorite people, and I am so pleased that we were able to share his story more publicly in this venue, and I hope even more broadly after this evening. So settle in for the next 13 minutes because I think it's a really informative, good film. So thanks, everyone.
My name is Eugene Ivey. I spent nearly 27 years in the Massachusetts prison system, 13 consecutive years in solitary confinement in the DDU, and I recently released August 19, 2021. I was sentenced to life in prison as a juvenile. I was 17 years old. I brought a pistol to an altercation, and this pistol was used by someone else to take another life. And this is something that I live with every day, that I will always live with. When you grow up in these inner cities, they're like, it's just, I don't know if you can liken it to, in many ways you can liken it to like almost a war zone, right? Where you have to be tough, right? And it's survival mode, survival of the fittest, right? And when I was 14, I was locked up. I was in DYS, Department of Youth Services. I was at the time in Westboro, Massachusetts. And so my mother was in hospice at the time, and I didn't understand what a hospice was. I just thought it was like a hospital. She would get better. My mother, she was diagnosed with AIDS, and shortly after I arrived in Westboro, she passed away, and it was a devastating blow for me. My mother was everything. She was my world, and when she died, it just sucked the life out of me. Took me to my mother's funeral in shackles. I had to go in shackles and sit at my mother's funeral, and ways changed. And it was so degrading. I just felt like, I don't know, I felt it was demoralizing. So when I look back on that, it's like I was separated from my mother, right? For things that, privileged kids, white privileged kids wouldn't be separated for, and it's like, it's the same thing back in the day, slavery, and where your babies are taken, you're sold, and that's it, you're gone. You're just a piece of property, just gone. What sent me to DDU was I had an altercation in the maximum security prison in Shirley. The guards were restraining another inmate, which pretty much kind of set me off. And I got up to go see what it was about. And then it kind of escalated from there, and I ended up assaulting the superintendent and a couple of COs that were involved. Well, ultimately I was brought to Walpole, to the segregation unit over there, infamously known as 10 Block. The best way to describe it is a dungeon. You go in, it's dark, it's dank. The cell's about the size of a pantry closet. You have a solid door which closes on another door, which is bars. And you go in and there's a small light affixed to it. You have a toilet and a sink inside there, and a bed is very, very small. I can reach and touch both walls like this. So I went over there in May of 2001, and I left in September. And they walked me right across the road to DDU. It's the departmental disciplinary unit, and it's the unit in which they send unruly inmates to. When I went to DDU, I was just turned 24 in June of that year. And when I found out that I would spend the next 10 years in DDU, it was surreal. It was just a surreal moment. Like, wow, I couldn't fathom it at the time. I call it, DDU, the devil's den. It's sort of like being, locked in a casket alive. DDU holds, I believe, 120 something inmates. It's 3 blocks, A, B, and C, with 4 tiers each. Everything's concrete, except the toilet and the sink, which is stainless steel. When you look out from the cell window, you look out onto cages. So these are the cages that you rec in when you go to your rec time, your hourly rec, which is the hour out of the cell. And 23 other hours are spent inside the cell. The rec deck is sort of like you have they're like dog kennels. When you have when you go to the shelter and you see the kennel for the dogs, it's the same thing, but made for humans. You had to be strip searched every time you left the cell. And it was very dehumanizing, demoralizing, and it brought back images of slavery when you see man, woman, child on these auction blocks being appraised and inspected. It's like a piece of property. And I was made to take all of my clothes off, open my mouth, raise my arms in the air, lift my private parts, turn around, bend over, spread them. And it was just, it just left for me, it just made me so angry. It made me so angry where it was times where I just did not leave the cell, right? The only time I left the cell would be to go to the shower. So I didn't have to experience this, this torture. Guys would tell me to go outside, but I didn't go outside that much. Because of that, it just felt like I was a savage being in the cages, pacing the cages, right? It didn't even matter that I wasn't getting any fresh air. I just didn't want to experience that feeling. Every time you left the cell, you was handcuffed and shackled, whether you went to the shower, you went to see medical, you went to visit. Even when you go to the visit, you're cuffed and shackled, and when you get there, it's a non-contact visit to begin with, and you're in this little glass encased cubicle, and they still have the shackles on you. Nothing can be more degraded than that. Your family, they see you in the shackles, and it's just like, wow. it just has this tremendous, tremendous psychological effect on you. Mail call for me was very big. That's when the magnitude and just the reality just kicks in. Like, I'm just here, just in this box, like in this coffin by myself, no lifeline. It's like the air is just being sucked out and you're just dying slow. Like, you're just withering away. And those are the times I'm like, wow, am I really going to be able to do this? Those were the hard times that really grinded on your mind, on your soul. You start to trip, your mind starts playing tricks on you. Like, I had to really dig deep down within myself to not really go to the other side, so to speak, because there were times where I would just not speak to people for days at a time. I would just shut down. It was an incident where it was a shakedown. And during the shakedown, they went and just destroyed myself. It was just stuff everywhere. So I became so angry, right? And I just felt like, wow, you do that. This is a savagery right here. So in order to feel like human, and this is where you get into, the psychological effects. The only for me to feel human, I made the extraction team coming in so I could just feel something, like to feel human, like I am human. The extraction team were, they were made of these big brolic guys with these turtle suits on and helmets. And very intimidating, right? And they come in, usually they'll employ chemical weapons, or they use like a paintball gun, and you shoot rubber bullets, or bullets that have gas, and they release this gas that takes the air from around you and blinds you. And then they come in with the shell, and they'll rush you and bring you down to the ground. And, it becomes one of those George Floyd things where, they pile on top of you and you can't breathe. You knew when they were coming in, they was coming to cause pain. They was coming to hurt you. So, but it was so bad, like psychologically, it was like, in order for me to feel human, like I had to have them come in on several occasions. Like I had to feel that, that contact to say, you're human. Even though they piling on you and potentially could kill you, I had to have that human contact to feel it, to feel like somebody. I've seen guys that I knew personally that come to DDU, sentenced to DDU, and they come over there, and then you don't know who they are any longer. They painting the wall with feces, they throwing urine on you, they calling you out your name. But it's definitely the environment. It creates paranoia, and a lot of guys do that for attention. But it just creates this anger in you, and that rage has to come out somewhere, and you just release it on anybody. So DDU is definitely not there to rehabilitate. It makes you, in most cases, worse than when you went in. My sentence turned into 12 years, 8 months from the original 10 years that I had because I couldn't adjust to something that was so unnatural, that was so dehumanizing and degrading. So I had a lot of anger and I directed it towards the administration and the staff. And I would just, I would go on a binge of, excuse my language, but fuck yous. And that was my way of coping. Just that anger. I didn't know how to channel that anger in a positive manner at that time. It took me a while to do so. Just speaking about it now, it just bring back those painful memories that you know, I can't escape it. I just can't.
Lisa, thank you so much for working with us and Eugene on that, and especially Eugene, of course, for being able to share that with all of us and going through that painful experience of having to retell your story and relive that in order to get it out. I know that's not easy to do, so we really deeply appreciate it. Lisa, did you want to say anything before I introduce the next video? Oh, you're muted. Okay. All right. I'll stick around to the end because we're going to have questions at the end, and Lisa's going to help moderate that. So
I just got unmuted, so I will just say that Eugene has spent, I think he's the third longest consecutive term in the DDU of anybody in Massachusetts. So it's a great horror that he's experienced, and also I think a very unique experience that we get to even hear from him, that he's even out in the community and able to share his story. And he's, as you can tell by just watching, he is remarkable and also very unusual that he was able to get through that and have his sanity. And that's something that he and I talk about all the time. So I just want everyone to bear in mind that most do not come out being in such good shape, so to speak, as Eugene, but he'll talk about that more later. Thanks, everyone.
thank you. So we have another short video that we want to show you. It's an interview, not done as professionally as the wonderful video that Rob did, but it was done here in our office with Angie Resto. And Angelina Marie Resto is on the Zoom with us tonight. She's formerly incarcerated, an Afro-Latina woman. In 2018, she wrote history of being the first trans woman to be transferred from a men's facility to a female prison. And that involved a long, arduous legal battle that PLS collaborated with Goodwin Procter and GLAAD. And without further ado, you'll hear all about Angie in this next short piece.
My name is Angelina Marie Resto. I'm a 57-year-old transgender woman. I've been in both prisons, men and women's prison, and it's been a tough road on the road in the prison system for me. Been raped 3 times, been through so much in life, and I'm still standing though. I grew up in Bronx, New York. I came from Puerto Rico at the age of 7. At the age of 13, I told my mother that we needed to talk because I had an eye for a man, you know, which it did not surprise her because she already seen this since I was small because her friends, when they used to go over for lunch, my mother always had Shirley Temple clothes for me and long. And I said, oh my gosh, she's a pretty mom. I said, that's a boy, but I understand. And maybe sometime down the road, y'all might understand, but I know that that's a boy, but there's also a woman inside there. So my mother was my biggest support, and she was the one that named me Angie. At the age of 13, I was taking hormones in the black market. We call it black markets. I was buying my hormones out in the street from a friend. That's how I started. But then at the age of 13, I met a doctor that I was introduced to, and she started prescribing medications to me because I lied to her about my age. I did, because I wanted to be the woman that I knew that it was inside me. So I started taking hormones at 13 or 14 that I can remember. Yes, very early age. I've been living my woman's life for 42 plus years, and I've been on hormones for 40 plus 2 years, you know? So it's been a long road on the hill for me as a transgender woman, which I do not consider myself a transgender woman. I consider myself a woman. My first case was at the age of 17. You know, I ended up in Rikers Island. It was like, I said, oh my God, I'm dying. That's what I said. It was something that I never thought that it would happen to me. That was my first rape, and like I read, there's times rejections, discrimination, or freak can really mess your brain up. Really mess your brain up. Like I always say in my presentations, there's a big wound still in my heart. Mental health can't heal it. God can't heal it. There's only one person that can heal it, and it's me. I'm my own too. The more I talk about it, the better I feel on a daily basis. I never dreamed of being the first transgender woman, breaking historical record, and making it into a women's prison, thanks to PLS and thanks to God. We took the case a further step. Lizz was one of my representatives. Kate was there at the time. I mean, and it was an amazing step. How the judge went about this and what he saw of me as a woman. It was very impressed, which I'm very proud, not only for myself, but for other women like myself of color, so they don't have to go what I went through in the prison system, in the men's prison system. Not saying that the woman was any better, because it was another nightmare, honest. Another nightmare there. But what really broke me down was that I expected this more from an inmate and not a staff, you know? And it was more of a staff thing, not an inmate thing.
The problems you faced?
Huh?
The problems you faced?
The problems I faced, the harassment that I faced, my second rate was a staff, you know, which was a wobble. When I say more training and learning, there should be a policy or rule that any staff of correction that works in the prison system and they have women, like I say, I don't like the word trans for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I say I'm just a woman. Women like myself that are in the system should be more protected, okay? Do not discriminate towards them. Treat them like a human being and give them the pronoun as it should be named. If you see a woman, treat her like a woman. Something's going to be done. How long it took me to get to women's prison? We talked about it. Nothing was done, but it got done at the end, didn't it? Let's get it, okay? Women like you, professionals that have the knowledge and the thing, for women like myself, I help them. You have done a phenomenal job with me. I would never forget about you women. Miss Kate was the first person I met. I remember the first hug she gave me when she saw my eyes so black and everything from so much crying. I can still remember that day today. And then when you came with your belly. And then I thought that Levy was a boy and she was a, because I didn't know. And this is the things that I've been through, but it has made me stronger on a daily basis. It's like I said, all this that I've been through, I don't want no other woman like myself go through it. Why? Why should another woman go through what I went through? It's not fair. All right? Now, I went through it, and what do I do now? I fight for what's right for women like myself. Stop the abuse, stop the discrimination. Okay? Give them their respect as who they are. Who are you to judge me? Like I said, I have my share of my life. I did my ups and downs. I can't regret nothing that I did, and I can't stop nothing that happened to me. All I can do is make it better and talk about it to help other people. Everything that I can give my community back, forgive me for my mistakes, but I'm here now to give you back. Okay? And all I can give is love, support, understanding, and don't let no one tell you you're not what you are.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Angie. Again, this was a collaboration between, in Angie's case. I mean, Angie has her own story before, during, and after she met PLS and other folks who worked on the case. But I do want to make a shout out to Black and Pink as well, and Michael Cox and others who work at Black and Pink who supported Angie during her incarceration, have continued to support her, and she's doing amazing work today as an advocate and member of Black and Pink, helping other trans folks who are incarcerated. I do want to take a moment to recognize Tony Downs from Goodwin Proctor, who co-counseled this case with us. And I want to say a few words about Tony, so we're going to present him with an award, not only for his work on this case with us, but on another case that's ongoing now. However, he's retiring, so we want to make sure we honor him. Tony is a retired partner at Goodwin and was the chair of the IP litigation practice. He has more than 30 years of litigation experience. He joined Goodwin in 1988 after clerking for Chief Justice William Rehnquist at the Supreme Court of the United States. He has been repeatedly listed in Chambers USA, America's Leading Lawyers for Business, and others for his work. Mr. Downs has briefed and argued many appellate cases, including multiple cases in the Federal Circuit, the First, Second, and Ninth and DC circuits, and in the appellate courts of Massachusetts. I had the honor of working on two major cases. So we've had the honor of working on two major cases with Tony. A current lawsuit is regarding Section 35. And this is challenging the constitutionality and legality generally of continuing to incarcerate men in a prison for substance use treatment under a civil commitment process known as Section 35. We ended this practice in Massachusetts in 2016 after a lawsuit that was filed then by us and the ACLU, and then legislated an end to incarcerating women under Section 35, but men continue to be incarcerated under Section 35, and over 3,000 men are actually incarcerated every year for substance use treatment that they unfortunately don't actually receive. And this, of course, is at the heart of the mass and caste debate that we mentioned earlier. Sadly, Massachusetts is the only state in the country that continues to do this, to incarcerate people under civil commitment proceedings like Section 35. But because of mass and caste, our officials are actually trying to expand the use of Section 35 in prisons and jails. So I hope we're successful in this case, but there's also legislation that you can get involved in as well. Tony was a partner at Goodwin while we litigated this case and litigated the case that got Angie transferred to MCI Framingham as well. He was an incredible partner in that. And I thank him so much for the work that he's done. Tony, we're going to miss you, but I know you'll still be around and continue to work with us. And I just want to give you a moment to say a few words if you'd like to.
Thank you, Liz. It was an honor to work with you and with the whole PLS. It's a great organization, and what you do is so important. It was an honor for me and my Goodwin colleagues to be able to work with the PLS and also with GLAD on this case where Angie was able to get moved to the women's prison. And we think there's still a long way to go to improve the conditions of the transgender people in the prisons. But we believe there will continue to be improvements. And a lot of that is due to the hard work that you guys really do. And for people like all the staff that I've gotten to know, many of whom I can see peering out at me as I'm speaking. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope I continue to work with you over time. So, and Angie, if she's on, I'm happy to give a shout out to Angie if she's on.
She is somewhere on here. She did join. Oh, she's going to be talking in a few minutes. You look beautiful, Angie. I see you right now. She's obviously the true hero here. We'll get to talk to her more in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tony. Hope you can stick around. Yeah.
I will. Thank you.
Next, we just have a few words from one of our dear board members, Ray Champagne. If you don't know Ray, you should. Ray actually knows PLS incredibly well, as he has been a board member longer than most of us have been on staff. Ray was incarcerated for over 45 years and was eventually exonerated of his murder charges in February of 2020. He continues to be on our board, and he's just been not only a wonderful advisor, but a great friend and a mentor to many of us, and I'm so grateful to have him here tonight. You're up, Ray.
Thank you. As Liz said, I served approximately a little over 45 years, and my dog's attacking me now. It's kind of hard to explain prison. I served over 39 years in maximum security, only 9.5 in SEG and 10 block, DSU 10 block. I predate the DDU. You know, while everybody was talking, you can't help but relive your prison experience. You know, prison is just, it inflicts pain. It does nothing. There's no such thing as rehabilitation. It's just about punishment and inflicting pain on people, whether it's through the use of segregation, visits. Going to visits is a punitive process. Getting mail. Every aspect of your life, there's some type of pain involved with doing it. You know, prison conditions, I entered prison in 1974 at the age of 19. And prison today is worse by far than it was in 1974. And it's continually gotten worse over the years. We have little blips where things sort of look like they're going to get better. And they don't. They actually end up getting worse. You know, there was a case several years ago in the 90s called the Hoffer case, which was dealt with DSU 10 block. The result of that case was the building of the DDU. We won, but we got the DDU as our reward. I don't know how that works. You know, I've never been in the DDU, but many of my friends have. And I know Eugene, we've been in the same cell block. He's a really amazing human being and a very generous person. You know, folks have mentioned earlier about oversight, and Liz and I were talking yesterday. And that's one of the main problems with prison, at least in Massachusetts. There's absolutely no oversight. If you check, you know, mass law books, you'll find how many cases have been won over and over and over, litigating the same issues over and over. And nothing ever changes. And when it does change, on paper, it sounds like, oh, good. But the reality for the convict is, oh, crap. You know, it is just the guards union. They know that I'm floating a little here. I'm sorry. I'm not good at this. You saw what they did to Catherine Dennehy when she had some ideas of making changes. If they did that to Kathy Dennehy, who was essentially their boss, he was the commissioner of corrections. And what do you think they do to convicts that they don't like? Just imagine that. Their philosophy is it doesn't matter who's in charge, because the governor, the legislature, they really just talk. They have all the power to make all the changes necessary to correct what is wrong with prisons. And they choose not to do it because voters, obviously, because everybody thinks that people in prison need to suffer. They need to feel pain. And no matter how long their sentence is, I was serving a natural life sentence for a prison homicide, the result of reliable informant information. For 41 years, they knew I was innocent. and allowed me to continue. And if it wasn't for Lisa Kavanaugh of CPS's Innocence Project, I'd still be sitting in Shirley Max, where I spent my last 21 years. These things and our entire criminal injustice system there's just no oversight on any of this. There's no penalties for any of these people. I mean, I can't think of any guard who actually suffered any penalty for brutalizing any convict, no matter how viciously that individual may have been beaten. Not one has actually lost his job that I'm aware of. And the ones that did got their jobs back because of the the guards union. The fact is, there's absolutely no oversight for prisons in Massachusetts and many other states, but I was warehoused in Mass, so I'll stick to this. That's where change can come from. And that's the only place it's going to come from. Until prison guards and the Department of Corruption as a whole is held accountable for what they do to individuals in those cages, nothing's ever going to change, because their guards are allowed to do what they want. When something happens and the cameras are focused for a while, they slow down because they know it's going to pass. You know, lawyers can litigate all day long. I've done enough of it myself. I was highly successful. I still ended up where I was for as long as I was. There needs to be change in Mass General laws for any change to occur in the prison system. We can win every case we have, and nothing will change, because 2 months later, they will be back to the same game. And just look at what's happened over COVID. Okay, I got to introduce, I'm sorry, Jim Rollins, not the author or the baseball player. All right, I'm sorry, I'm a little wired up now. Thank you.
Ray, thank you very much. This is Jim Rollins, and I unfortunately do not get confused for the shortstop Jimmy Rollins, though I sometimes get those comments in Philadelphia. I am the vice chair, or the vice president of the board, and also chair of the board's development committee. First, I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. I especially want to thank our speakers, and most especially Eugene, Angie, and Ray. Their stories from their own experience are, I think, probably the most important things that we've heard this evening, and maybe the most important things we've heard for quite some time on this subject. As Ray just mentioned, we can work hard and litigate, and alas, we are sometimes litigating the same issues over and over again, and even winning over and over again. But that only has a limited impact if the folks we are seeking to, whose behavior we are seeking to modify, are not held to account. And that is one of the most important missions of PLS, is to hold Department of Correction and related parties to account. Let me move us on. I want to congratulate Tony Downs and his supportive colleagues at Goodwin for all of the good work you have done, and I trust you're not done. I know you're retiring, sort of, but I trust you're not done. I look forward to continuing to work with you. Thanks to all of you for your financial support as well as other support. That is one of the reasons we're here tonight. That is critical. To those of you who have given, and as well as those of you who have not yet given financially, if you can afford to do so. There are many ways to do it. The easiest way is probably just to go to our website and click on donate. And if you have any concerns about how to do that, I think all of you probably have Valerie's email. And you can just send Valerie an email, and she'll give her a text, and she'll help you figure it out. We have had some special supporters for this evening, and I do want to recognize our sponsors. They include Goodwin Proctor, Morgan Lewis, Patty Garin, and Josh Stone. Gardner Howland Shaw Foundation, Libby Hoops Brooks, Mintz Levin, Nelson Mullins, Todd and Welv, Wilmer Hale, J.W. Carney Jr. and Associates, Meehan Boyle, Black and Bogdanow, Ken Parsegian and Shay Mayer, the Law Office of Rosemary Scapiccio, Rosenfeld and Rafik, Shay and LaRock, Tansley Halloran, Greg Torres and Betsy Patullo, Stephen Weymouth. Thanks to all of you. At this point, we are not finishing our work this evening, but we're transitioning to a different phase, and would appreciate, for those of you who can do so, to stick with us. We're going to have a question and answer session. We are going to be hearing from all of our speakers, from Eugene, Angie, and Ray, and we are going to have that moderated by a couple of our, well, actually by Liz, as well as by, excuse me, make sure I don't forget anybody here. Well, Liz as well as by Lisa. Sorry about that. Also, if you have specific questions, one of the ways to get them before us this evening, you should feel free to text or chat with Valerie, and she has just put that direction into the chat box, chat function here. So she will help to get those questions onto people and help to moderate. Thank you all again for joining us this evening, and we will move on to our question and answer. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Okay, it's great that we can actually get to talk to everyone now, and let me just make sure I know Eugene is on, and I see Angie, and Ray. So, questions. If folks have questions, feel free to state them, and otherwise, I would love to have Angie, Eugene, and Ray. Feel free to say anything that you want to add that wasn't in your video that you really wanted to get out there. You should feel free to say that now. And can people unmute themselves now, Val, or do we need to unmute people? Yeah, Val's working on that. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, Angie.
Hi, Miss Matos. How you doing? I'm sorry, I have a little trouble with my Zoom, and then I caught a little cold in a few days. Cleaning the house for Thanksgiving and getting things together. Hopefully, my daughter will be here from Florida with my grandkids, so I'm happy. That's why I didn't want to go to the office, because I think I'm getting a little cold and I didn't want to get no one sick. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys. I mean, it's amazing that all these stories that we go around hearing from different folks and different guys, it's sad that for myself as a woman that all we have to go through while we're in the prison system during our time, we have to put up with so much crap, and so much shit with the bullshit with the COs, because they don't respect us for who we are. And it's so sad that I was sentenced to do a skip bit. I'm gonna call it a skip bit because I am 28 years of my life in prison on and off. And it's like, I got sentenced to do a 3-5 this time, but at the same time, I got sentenced to be sexually harassed, abused, mistreated, discriminated. And it's crazy how the system really works inside, behind these prison walls. And it's like, this is why I speak today, because before I was so scared to speak, because I was always threatened, I was always scared. that they will hurt me or hurt my family, you know? And it's sad that we as human beings, we have to deal with the bullshit that goes inside this prison walls. But only we could speak about it and talk about it because we don't want that there. But it's good to know that I need to hear our voices though a lot, you know? Like for myself, I've done like 20 years in and out of prison, like I said. And, you know, I was in the prison system when I was in the streets. And it's like, wow, no one could hear this wound but myself. Like I always say, I'm my own too, you know? Every time I speak about this in a presentation that I give or any, you know, speech that I give when I go around colleges like Boston University, MIC, a lot of gigs that Black campaigns always get from me because people do call for me because they're so interested in my story. Because I broke a story record being the first transgender woman ever make it into a prison system, a woman's prison system. Fair to say, yes, I've been in both prisons. One is no different than the other, which I thought it was. No different. I can say from experience and being in both prisons, you know, especially the female, I think female prison is even worse. I mean, when I say worse, it's worse. Like the first 2 weeks that I was there, I said, oh my God, I made it to Paradise where I belong. Because it was so different. But then after 2 months, it was the chaos, the bullshit. Then this time was female COs at me. I got looked for one because she thought that her man was hitting on me. I said, excuse me? You know, and it was like, wow, you know,
Angie.
and then others, yes.
I am I don't want to cut you off because I could listen to you for hours. But we have a couple of questions, so we want people to
Okay, sure.
ask some questions. Okay. No.
Okay.
The one question, and this is, there are a number of people on here who have worked on ending life without parole sentences. So this question I think is not for you, Angie, although you're welcome to add your thoughts as well.
Okay.
But there's a campaign in Massachusetts to end life without parole, and someone is asking about where that campaign is at. And there are a number of people on here who have been working on that. So I want to invite people to jump in. I know Jesse's on, who's been working with the folks on Life Without Parole campaign, but there are certainly others on here as well. And I think there's a question for Eugene right after that. So hang on, Angie. I think we're going to have Jesse jump in.
Okay, sure. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, so the campaign to end life without parole is ongoing. There's we meet every other week actually, and it's a great group. It's co-chaired by Carter Reed and Sean Ellis, two formerly incarcerated people who both served life sentences before getting released. Sean having been exonerated, and Carter because he was serving second-degree life and was paroled. The campaign includes directly impacted people, family members, advocates, activists, and we're working right now to try to pass an act to reduce mass incarceration, which would end life without parole both going forward and then also retroactively. So it would make sure that everyone currently incarcerated on life without parole would be parole eligible after serving 25 years. They would be eligible for parole. It's a long-term campaign. It's going to take a lot to get life without parole ended in Massachusetts. I would encourage anyone who wants to get involved to please get involved. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat again, and I can hook you into the campaign if you'd like to be a part of it. I think we're going to need to build a big and active base to pressure our legislature leaders to end life without parole, which is a critical imperative. For anyone who doesn't know, a sixth of the prison population in Massachusetts is currently serving life without parole. So this is a huge issue and incredibly important for us to all be working on together.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. We have a question directed to Eugene. The question is, Eugene, what do you think is the most important work that PLS does for prisoners? And what do you think would be the most important thing for us to start doing that we don't do now?
Wow.
Just a small question, very small.
Is that's a interesting question. I think that PLS gives prisoners voices, otherwise they wouldn't be heard out here in the communities. As Bonnie said earlier, PLS helped with the issue of the DOC being able to sentence guys beyond their sentence over there in DDU indefinitely. So that was great. So PLS is definitely needed for more advocacy for those that can't be heard out here. As far as any other things that can be worked on, I don't know. I think the Criminal Justice Reform Act is a starter there, because most of the changes that were supposed to be implemented aren't being implemented. And if they are, they're being just retweaked and they're staying the same. So I think it's important for organizations like PLS to be involved with these issues.
Thanks, Eugene.
Yes, you're welcome.
Really helpful. Yeah, and I feel like I can name 20 things that I'd like to be doing that we're not doing. So I think that could be an all-day conversation. We do have a question for Ray. It's sort of along the same lines, but Ray, if lawsuits don't work to bring change, why should we keep suing them?
Well, just imagine where we'd be if we didn't litigate. It's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on an open wound. You might be able to stop the blood, but the infection might still be there, but you still got to stop the blood. Otherwise the person might die. Litigation is so important. It's unfortunately, when it's going on, it's important. It gives guys hope. And I can't, I try to think of what it's like sitting in my cells when no matter where I was being warehoused. And, prison is extremely lonely. I can't even articulate it. It's sort of like death. I always say you don't live in prison, you exist there, because you're not living a life. I spent my entire 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s in a cage. And I still don't know who I am right now. I mean, I've been out 21 months. But litigation helped me survive in prison, because you got to fight. I had a sticker that was on my wall in every cell I was warehoused in for, I think, 35 years. Exist to resist. And sometimes that's all you can do. Eugene talked about it about forcing the screws to come in and give him a beating just so he could feel something. I get it. Believe me, I get it. And you're so far removed from everything. And when litigation is going on, you kind of feel like someone cares about you as a person. And I think the two biggest lawsuits during my imprisonment was the Hoffer case and the brutality project that was run through PLS. It's the first time I've ever seen both those cases where prison guards were actually like, excuse my language, oh, fuck. Because anytime anything happened, there were lawyers at the prison with cameras, and it drove them nuts. And they tempered their actions for a while. Then the cameras went away and, business as usual. But for just a little bit of time, you got to feel empowered. And for people who have no power, and there's no one more powerless than a child and a prisoner. Your life is not yours. Everything happens through the good graces of other people. And when other people hate you, and I do mean that word hate, You have no idea how hateful prison guards are towards convicts. It's an institution thing, and I don't mean institution like the prison, the box, but the whole essence of it. They're taught, you know, when they go to little prison school, and, you know, who do we hate? Inmates. That's what they used to chant when they do their little military marches. That's how they perceive us. We're the enemy. They're there to punish us. They're there to make our lives miserable, and they do everything possible. You know, litigation is important. Prior to, actually, I did the first case ever for awaiting action in segregation in DSU 10 block and won. No lawyers would touch that case prior to that. And at that time, guys could be sitting in segregation for years. Literally, Billy Royce was in segregation for 3 years awaiting action for a disciplinary offense. No charges yet, just under investigation, awaiting action. I was there for 139 days. And I litigated and won, and Royce, I did his suit, and he ultimately won, and Kenny won. PLS took that case up on appeal. It's important because it made changes for a little while. And if you can only live from week to week, month to month, you can't even envision a year in prison. You can't think that far ahead because you may not survive the next morning. And I mean that. Prison is a dangerous place, and not just because of the convicts. It's an ugly, ugly environment. When I entered prison, there was a lot of homicides in Walpole. You know, they made all these changes and prosecuted and did all this stuff. And now the people that die in prison, for the most part, are suicides. More people die in prison today because of suicides than any violence committed by a convict. That's not addressed a lot. I know there's a lot of stuff on mental health that goes on in prison, and it is kind of a mental health place. I watched it change in the 90s. I don't even know how to explain it. Okay, I hope I answered something there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. So the next question we have can be directed to Eugene, Angie, or Ray, or all of you if you want to speak up on it. But what is the most important thing to include in effective oversight at the DOC? So I think we all know that the DOC needs major oversight. So what do you think is most important to include to make that actually effective?
I'll take it on. I think we really need the legislatures. I think we need the governor to step in. It has to be some type of accountability here, because otherwise they're going to keep getting away with what they're doing. I mean, they just disregard judges' orders. They have there's no oversight to hold these people accountable. You know, the governor, he gets on TV and gets behind these closed doors, make these statements that ring hollow. You know, there is no accountability for the Department of Corrections, right?
Eugene, what types of things do you think need to be, do they need to be accountable for? Like, in other words, what abuses are you seeing that we need oversight to be monitoring? Well,
for once, they need to be, you know, the abuses, the physical abuse, you know, a levy towards inmates, the verbal and mental abuse that's levied towards the inmates' families. There has to be some oversight with regards to the mail situation, as far as the legal mail being sent in from the clients through the attorneys that I was affected by, and as well as you. So there has to be, but it's broader issues here. It's more broader than that. But it definitely has to come from the governor on down. It has to.
Ray or Angie, did either one of you want to comment on that?
I think there needs to be some penalties. You know, you can keep doing things if you suffer no penalty for it. It's like, you know, you break the law, there's a penalty. You stomp a prisoner into mud, there's no penalty. There's no penalty whatsoever that is suffered by either the Department of Corrections as a whole when they violate court orders. You know, I've been through that. You know, I had a judge threaten to put a warden in jail for violating a court order. He never went to jail, but I ended up spending 3.5 years in segregation. I don't think that was very fair, but, you know, it's part of the game you play when you're in prison. But if there's no kind of, I don't want to say follow-up, but if guards keep doing the same things they do and there's no penalty, if the wardens continually allow them to do what they do because there's no penalty, the Commissioner of Corrections allows the same things to occur and there's no penalty, who's accountable? Who is accountable for what goes on in prison? When all these cases are won, and I mean, there's a long history of successful litigation in Massachusetts. Not much has changed, but all the people who allowed those abuses to continue to go on for the years, there was never any type of penalty for those individuals. And, you know, they lose their job and then they come back and the next thing you know, the guy that beat your head in is now the warden.
Ray, Ray, I think what you're saying is that the law should actually apply to staff in the DOC. So in other words, meaning if people are going to be convicted of crimes in a court system and sent to prison, if abuses and crimes are committed inside the Department of Correction, they also should be treated as such and actually prosecuted and dealt with. It's not that they should be able to just get away with committing crimes and not having any kind of penalty whatsoever. There's a question I wanted to read that I think is going to naturally go to Eugene in terms of this panel. How is the treatment in regards to your race? Does systemic racism prove harder on men of color?
Well, absolutely. Prison is just a mere microcosm of society, right? The same level of discrimination that I deal with out here and the threat of violence from the police is the same thing that I experience in prison. There's no difference. You know, but it's magnetized 1,000 times more in prison. Race is just, it is what it is. And, you know, the guards, you know, they're coming from these rural communities and they have these, you know, these schools of thoughts, right? Where, like Ray mentioned that, you know, we're the guards and they're the enemies. But when you're a person of color, be you a male inmate or a female inmate, but you're of color, then you suffer the same abuses in there than you do out here. You know, it can go from even you be discriminated for a job. You be at you're the lowest person on the totem pole. You know, you can go and get the lowest job in an institution, or you can get skipped over for a position in a classroom. You know, the same discrimination, the same sexism, the same racism is in abundance inside. There's no difference. It is the same thing. You're under threat of being assaulted by the guards. I went through that several times. It was an incident where I was pulled over for not having my shirt tucked, my T-shirt tucked in, surrounded by all white officers. Only because I was a person of color, right? And, you know, it's just something, I don't know, it has to be some accountability. It has to.
Thank you, Eugene. I think Liz, you're taking the next question.
Yeah, so this will be the last question since it's 7 o'clock. But I want to thank everyone for hanging out with us for all this time. Question to our speakers, whoever wants to take it, is in the chat. And should our goal be to abolish the prison system? Perfect last question.
I'll take this. I would
Go,
say,
Ray.
yes. I mean, if prison doesn't work, and you know, I don't know what its function's supposed to be, but they say rehabilitation. If people get out of prison more damaged than they went in, then all they've done is, you know, made the situation much worse. Prison doesn't make people better. You know, I was a criminal. You know, I wasn't like an innocent person I was serving a prison sentence. And, you know, I've been serving time since I was 13 years old. This is the longest I've ever been free in my life. I just figured that out the other day. 21 months since I was 13 years old. This is the longest I've ever been free. People do grow out of crime. There is change, but not change by the DOC. It usually comes from individuals. And I know a lot of convicts. Everybody I know just about is a convict. You know, something happens. I don't know if it's because of the prison conditions and what you see. You do change in prison, and education is important. And to me, that's the only thing that has caused change to individuals in prison. Fortunately, a lot of guys read, and when you educate yourself, because the Department of Corruption doesn't do it very well, you look at life differently. I don't know. I went in at 19 and came out when I turned 65, 26 days later. Did I grow up? I don't know. I stopped using drugs, you know, and it wasn't because of the Department of Corruption I did that. You know, I have an amazing partner, Molly Baldwin, and it wasn't prison that did it, though. It might have, because of the conditions, I had to grow and change, or I would have never survived. I'm talking about it intellectually, spiritually. I just, but it was not one thing that the Department of Corruption ever did that made me change. They made me angry, made me more violent than I ever was on the street because of the environment of prison. You know, I don't think prison works. Whatever works is, I mean, it incapacitates people, but it doesn't help people grow. It doesn't help people advance, you know, socially. You know, they do everything they can to make you antisocial. You know, just look the way they treat visitors. That doesn't make you a better person. When you isolate people, when prison is the only thing you know, how are you going to survive out here? It's difficult. And I have a strong network with myself, including some of the people here. I don't know what the answer is, but I know the answer. Prison hasn't worked since they began in Philadelphia. Otherwise, there would be no recidivism. It's not a very good tool, but it makes a lot of people, or some people, money, and employs a lot of people. And, you know, but I don't think it makes anybody any safer. I truly believe that. Thank you.
I agree. Well said, Ray. Eugene, Angie, you want to add anything to that before we wrap up?
I just want to say that I appreciate everyone here, and for you allowing me to have this platform to be here and to, you know, share my story and be the voice for those that are you know, behind the wall, and those of us that are out here in the community that are still incarcerated, right? Because, you know, I'm still, although I'm out here back in society, I'm still incarcerated. I have a bracelet on my leg. I will be on parole for the rest of my life, unless that change, we bring about some change with that. And I think it's important that, we all of us keep up the fight and just be bold, right? And we have to change come in increment. It has to be like incremental change because we're fighting against a machine, a system that's been operating for hundreds of years. This isn't anything new. The system isn't broken, right? It's working the way it was designed. And I think we just have to keep chipping away at it, right? It's daunting at times and it can be very, very tiring. Like I'm tired. Like I've been out here 3 months without identification, right? And I think that's the most difficult thing when a person returns back to the community is to not have any identification because you're nobody, right? And that's just an added stress onto having the bracelet and having that mark of the Corey on your back. But like I said, I'm gonna do everything I can, and I will lend my voice wherever it's needed, and I'm gonna keep up the fight. And I'm proud and I'm happy to be able to join you all in doing that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eugene. Angie, I think I saw you trying to say something too, so I'm going to try and help you unmute. You got it? You just have
Yep,
to-
I got
There you go.
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just said what he said. I was about to say something like that. That it's a pleasure, to be here with you guys. So,
No, Angie, we're losing you, unfortunately. Maybe put it in the chat because you're frozen. I'm so sorry. But we love being with you too. We're so glad you could be here. Yeah.
Hello?
Oh, there you go. Go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
It's choppy though. Let's try it one more time.
Okay. I said that it's been a pleasure being here with you guys and sharing my stories and hearing other people's stories. And it's all I want to do is just help and leave something for the new generation that's coming up, especially when it comes to the LGBTQ, because the transgender women of color are the ones that are more hurt in this world and discriminated. So that's why my voice is going to continue being heard and I will continue fighting for what's right. And thank you for having me here.
Aw, thank you, Angie. It was so awesome to be with you all. And I'm really glad that we gave you guys this space. Thank you all so much for being here, hanging out with us and supporting us. And next year, I look forward to having a conversation in person. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your nights. The rest of your night,
Yes.
I guess it's one night. Relax, and we hope to see you again very, very soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a
Thank you
good
all.
night. Bye.